I never thought the day would come when my own grandson would look me in the eye and say, "You're ruining my wedding, Grandpa." Those words hit harder than any storm I've ever stood through. They didn't just sting, they cracked something deep inside me. I'd buried friends, survived heart surgery, even lost my wife after 52 years together. But nothing prepared me for the sound of betrayal from the boy I once taught how to tie a tie. And it happened right there, in front of 200 people holding champagne glasses and pretending not to hear. My name is Tom Harrison. I'm 76, retired firefighter, widower, and apparently, according to my grandson's fiancée, a liability to the image of their wedding. She said it like she was diagnosing a disease. And maybe, in their polished little world of influencers and entrepreneurs, an old man with a cane and too many stories really is a kind of infection. Let me take you back a few months to when this all started. Before tuxedos and fake smiles. Before everything fell apart. When Ethan called to say he was getting married, I was genuinely happy for him. After losing his father, my son Ben, to a car accident 10 years ago, Ethan was all I had left of him. The same crooked grin, the same way of laughing with his whole chest. For years, it was just me and him fishing at Lake Huron, eating burnt marshmallows and talking about everything under the stars. So, when he said, "Grandpa, I've found the one," I wanted to believe it until I met her. Her name was Olivia Pearson, 26 years old, lifestyle blogger, 500,000 followers. The kind of person who starts every sentence with content strategy. She met Ethan at a tech convention in Toronto, where she was hosting some panel about building a digital legacy. I remember their first dinner together at my house. Olivia looked around my living room like it was an antique store. Her smile was polite, practiced. "It's so cozy," she said, which I knew was rich girl language for outdated. The old photos on the wall, the hand-carved coffee table I built in '84, none of it fit into her glossy world. Ethan didn't notice. He was in love. He laughed, held her hand, called her Liv. He talked about her podcast, her brand deals, her networking skills. Meanwhile, I sat there wondering when love had turned into a business partnership. The first real red flag came a week later when Olivia called me out of the blue. "Mr. Harrison," she said sweetly, "Ethan and I are planning a small destination wedding in Banff. Very private, very modern. I just wanted to make sure you're comfortable with travel." "Travel's fine," I said. "I can walk slower than I used to, but I'll make it." She hesitated. "It's just, there won't be a lot of older guests, mostly our friends, our network. The vibe is minimalist, you know? Less traditional." "Meaning what?" "Well," she laughed lightly, "just that we don't really need speeches or sentimental stuff. We want it clean, elegant, curated. Curated, like a museum exhibit." I should have known then that love didn't have much to do with this wedding. Still, I tried to stay positive. I bought a new suit, even booked a room at their fancy eco-resort. I wanted to be there for Ethan, even if his bride treated me like a PR hazard. But things started to unravel fast. First, she cut my seat at the rehearsal dinner. "It's just limited capacity," she said with that glossy smile. Then came the family photo list. My name wasn't on it. "We're doing mostly immediate relatives," Olivia explained. "It keeps the visuals cohesive." Visuals. She talked about her own wedding like a marketing campaign. Ethan didn't say much. Every time I looked at him, I saw the conflict in his eyes, but he'd just mumble, "She's under a lot of stress, Grandpa. The sponsorship deals, the photographers, you know how these things go." No, I didn't. My wedding to his grandmother was in a church basement with chicken soup and an old Polaroid camera. No hashtags, no brand collaborations, no engagement metrics. Just love, and enough of it to last half a century. The night before the wedding, Olivia held a private content dinner for her influencer friends. I wasn't invited, but I heard about it later, from the hotel bartender who recognized me from earlier. "Your granddaughter-in-law's quite the celebrity," he said, polishing a glass. "They filmed the whole dinner like a movie set. One of her friends called you the sentimental prop. That's supposed to be you?" I didn't answer. Just finished my whiskey and went back to my room, where an envelope sat under my door. It was from Ethan. Inside was a handwritten note. "Grandpa, please don't make things awkward tomorrow. Liv's nervous about the vibe. I'll make it up to you later. Love, E. Please don't make things awkward, as if my existence was an inconvenience. The next morning, the mountains were glowing with sunrise, and the air smelled like pine and frost. I put on my suit, fixed my tie twice, and walked slowly to the ceremony site. Rows of white chairs lined the field. A floral arch framed the view, and drones buzzed overhead like flies. Olivia floated down the aisle in a silk gown that probably cost more than my truck, smiling for cameras more than for her groom. When the officiant said, "If anyone has reason this couple should not be joined," I half expected one of her brand sponsors to stand up and shout, "The contract's not finalized yet." But I stayed quiet, for Ethan's sake, for my son's memory, for the family I'd already lost once. After the vows, as the reception began, one of Olivia's assistants, a 20-year-old with a headset, tapped me on the shoulder. "Mr. Harrison, we need you to step aside for a few photos, please." I moved, thinking they just needed space, but she guided me all the way to the back corner of the venue, near the service tent. "You'll be more comfortable here," she said brightly. My seat was at a small table beside the catering staff. When I looked up at the main hall, I saw Olivia and Ethan surrounded by their friends, posing in front of a neon sign that read, "Arj, Ethan, and Liv forever." Not a single family photo, not one. That's when Ethan came over, face tense. "Grandpa," he started quietly, "can you not come up during the toasts? Liv thinks it might confuse the photographers." "Confuse them how?" I asked. "I'm your grandfather. Just the flow, okay? Please. You're kind of making things difficult." "I'm making things difficult," he sighed. "You're ruining the energy." And there it was. The moment I'll never forget. "You're ruining my wedding, Grandpa." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the boy who once cried when his fish died, the boy who used to say I was his hero. Now he was standing there in a designer tuxedo, apologizing for my presence. I nodded slowly. "All right, son, if that's what you want." Then I stood, adjusted my tie, and walked out into the cold air while their laughter and music faded behind me. But what Ethan didn't know was that the wedding wasn't over. Not for me. Because the next morning, when those perfect Instagram posts went live, the whole world would see something Olivia hadn't planned for. Something about honor. And this old man still had a few lessons left to teach. I didn't sleep that night. The sound of laughter from the banquet hall kept echoing in my head long after the music had stopped. I sat on the balcony of my small hotel room, staring at the mountains wrapped in silver moonlight, thinking about all the ways a family can fall apart without anyone noticing. One cruel sentence, one careless decision, one misplaced pride, and suddenly you're strangers at the same table. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. They wanted me invisible? Fine. I'd disappear, but on my own terms. When my wife Margaret was alive, she used to say, "Tom, dignity isn't something people give you. It's something you hold on to even when they try to take it away." She was the quiet kind, but when she spoke, her words stuck to your soul. I could almost hear her voice that morning as I packed my suitcase. Her photo was still in my wallet, the one of her smiling in the garden we built together. "Don't let them make a fool of you," she used to say. So, before I left the resort, I did something Margaret would have called mischievous with purpose. I stopped by the reception desk and asked the event coordinator for a quick favor. "Do you still have the footage from last night's live stream?" I asked. She blinked, a little confused. "For the wedding? Yes, we're sending it to the bride's media team today." "Perfect," I said, slipping her a tip. "Mind sending me a copy too? The groom's grandfather, you know. I want a little keepsake." That video would turn out to be more valuable than either of them could imagine. 3 days later, back home in Ontario, I was sitting at my kitchen table, scrolling through the newlywed posts. Olivia's feed was everywhere. The wedding of the year, a fairy tale in the mountains, two souls building their legacy. Every photo was perfectly edited, the golden light, the expensive smiles, not a single trace of me. It was like I'd been cut out of existence. Even Ethan's profile looked staged, all brand tags and hashtags. The boy I raised was gone, replaced by something curated for strangers to click on. But then I noticed something strange. In one of Olivia's stories, the video of their first dance, There was a reflection in the glass behind them. Me, sitting alone at that small corner table, blurred and half hidden, but visible enough for anyone to notice. A few people already had. The comments were piling up. "Who's the old man in the back? Why does he look so sad? Is that her grandpa or something? Why is he not with the family? This looks off, so cold." For someone obsessed with image, that kind of question was poison. The next morning, Olivia posted a new statement under the same video. "Sometimes we have to set boundaries, even with family. Protecting our peace matters." My hands shook reading that. Protecting their peace from me. That's when I decided it was time to tell my side. I opened my laptop and started writing. Not angry, not vindictive, just the truth. A letter, but not to them. To the world that had seen one side of a story and thought they knew it all. I told them about the man who raised his grandson after a tragedy, about the old firefighter who gave everything so the boy could go to college, about the wedding, where love had been replaced by branding. I wrote about being asked to sit aside, about the words that had broken my heart, about the simple truth that family honor isn't about photographs. It's about respect. I posted it to my old Facebook page. I didn't expect much. I have about 80 friends, most of them retired guys who spend more time gardening than scrolling. But within hours, messages started flooding in, then thousands of shares. Someone reposted it on Reddit. By evening it was on Twitter, then news sites. Grandfather's open letter about wedding exclusion goes viral. They called me the forgotten grandfather. People wrote things like, "This broke my heart. Our generation needed to hear this." Family isn't an aesthetic. By the second day, the story had 500,000 views. Reporters were calling my landline. "Mr. Harrison, can we interview you? Would you appear on Good Morning Toronto?" I said no to all of them. I hadn't written it for fame. I wrote it because silence had become too heavy to carry. Then, around noon, Ethan called. "Grandpa, what did you do?" His voice was sharp, panicked. "I told the truth," I said calmly. "Liv is freaking out. She's losing brand deals, sponsors are pulling out. They think we're cruel." "Cruel?" I repeated. "What would you call asking your grandfather to hide during your wedding?" He sighed, frustrated. "You don't understand how things work now. It's about optics, professionalism." "Optics?" I interrupted. "You mean pretending you're someone you're not?" There was a long silence. I could hear Olivia's voice in the background, angry, muffled. Then Ethan said quietly, "You embarrassed us." I laughed bitterly. "Son, you did that yourself. All I did was hold up a mirror." He hung up on me. I sat there a long time after the call ended, staring at the muted phone. I'd raised that boy to be honest, to stand for something, and now he was measuring his worth in likes and sponsorships. But deep down, I still hoped that the real Ethan, the kid who once promised me he'd never forget where he came from, was still in there somewhere. 2 days later, I got an email from the resort's event coordinator. "Mr. Harrison, as you requested, here's the full recording of the ceremony and reception." I downloaded it, not knowing why I felt a chill as it started playing. Maybe because I sensed that within that footage lay the final truth I needed. The video opened with drone shots, sweeping over the mountains. Then the ceremony, flawless, elegant, soulless. And then the reception. I watched myself sitting in the corner, invisible to everyone, while they toasted and danced. But halfway through, something caught my eye. In the background of a shot where Olivia was giving her speech, her mic still on, she turned to one of her friends and whispered, "God, I hope the old man doesn't come up here and start crying or something. It'll ruin the vibe." My chest tightened. She'd said that during the wedding, during the speech about family and unity. That was when I stopped the video and leaned back, the decision forming clear as daylight. If they cared about vibe, they were about to experience a very different kind of publicity. I called an old friend of mine, Mark Stevens, former journalist, now running a small online channel focused on real stories. We'd known each other since the Firehouse days. "Mark," I said, "I think I've got a story for you, but it's not about revenge, it's about truth, about what happens when people forget what family means." He listened quietly, then said, "Send me the clip." By the next morning, the headline was everywhere. "Grandfather cut out of wedding. Viral video reveals bride's cold words." The footage spread like wildfire. Thousands of comments flooded in. Sympathy, outrage, and something else. Reflection. People sharing their own stories of being treated like background extras in their families. And somewhere in the noise of it all, one small message appeared in my inbox. It was from Ethan. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. But forgiveness isn't something you write in a message. You earn it. And before that could happen, I had something left to do. One last act to remind them that family honor isn't measured by followers, but by what you stand for when the world's watching. Because the world was watching now, and I was just getting started. When the story hit national TV, I realized things had gone much further than I'd ever intended. I hadn't planned to start a crusade, but somehow the truth had struck a nerve far beyond my little town. Reporters camped near my mailbox. College students sent me letters about their grandparents. A woman from Calgary wrote, "You reminded me to call my dad before it's too late." It was touching, overwhelming, and exhausting all at once. But not everyone was touched. On the 3rd morning, as I was pouring coffee into my chipped blue mug, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to see Ethan standing there, looking 10 years older than the last time I'd seen him. The dark circles under his eyes told me sleep had been a rare luxury lately. Behind him, a rental car idled in my driveway. Olivia sat inside, big sunglasses covering half her face. She didn't even look at me. "Can we talk?" he said. We sat at my kitchen table, the same one he'd eaten pancakes on as a kid. The silence between us was thick, heavy. He kept twisting his wedding band. "I lost 2 sponsors," he finally said, "and Olivia's PR agency dropped her. She's getting death threats online." I stirred my coffee slowly. "You think I'm celebrating that?" "I don't know what to think anymore," he said, voice cracking slightly. "I just wish you hadn't gone public." "Ethan," I said quietly, "I didn't go public. I spoke. People listened." "That's on them." He rubbed his face. "You could have called me. We could have handled it privately." I nodded. "And would you have listened? Before all this, you told me to stay out of sight, that I was ruining your wedding." He flinched. "I didn't mean it like that." "How else could you have meant it, son?" He didn't answer, just stared at his hands. "I know you love her," I continued, "but love without respect turns to rot. You let someone convince you that family's a brand to edit and filter. That's not love, that's control." He sighed, defeated. "You don't understand the pressure, Grandpa. Everything's online now. Every post, every picture, it all matters. It's how careers live or die." I leaned back, studying him. "And in chasing that, you forgot how to live at all." He looked up at me, eyes wet. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "I know," I said softly, "but you did, and you hurt yourself too." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the old kitchen clock. Then he whispered, "She wants to apologize." I glanced out the window. Olivia was still in the car, scrolling through her phone like nothing in the world could touch her. "Does she?" I asked. "She's scared to come in." "Of me?" He hesitated. "Of what people will say." That told me everything I needed to know. "Tell her I'm not the internet," I said. "I'm the man whose son died, thinking he'd raised a decent family." Ethan looked like he'd been punched. He stood, then paused. "Are you going to forgive me?" "Someday," I said, "when you remember who you are." He nodded slowly, eyes glistening, and left. I watched the car pull away, Olivia's face briefly turning toward my window before disappearing down the road. For a while after that, the house felt emptier than usual. I spent my days fixing little things that didn't need fixing, tightening screws, oiling hinges, organizing my late wife's gardening tools. But at night, when the phone rang or another email came in, I realized something strange. People weren't reaching out for gossip. They wanted guidance. "Mr. Harrison, I haven't spoken to my dad in 5 years. Should I? Tom, how do you keep your dignity when your family doesn't respect you?" One woman even wrote, "You've become the internet's grandfather." I laughed at that. If only they knew how stubborn this old man really is, I muttered to myself. Mark, the journalist friend who'd helped me post the video, called me one evening. "Tom, you're trending again. People want to hear from you. Maybe it's time you spoke about forgiveness, not just pride." "I'm not interested in revenge," I told him. "But people deserve to see that integrity doesn't mean silence. Sometimes love means drawing a line. He said, then maybe show them what love looks like after the storm. That idea stuck with me. 2 weeks later, I got an invitation in the mail. No return address, just elegant handwriting. Ethan and Olivia invite you to a family dinner. No cameras, no brands, just truth. I almost threw it away. But something in me, maybe Margaret's voice again, whispered, go. So I did. The dinner was at a small farmhouse restaurant on the edge of town. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was that Olivia's makeup was gone. No cameras, no entourage, just a young woman who looked tired and lost. Ethan stood when he saw me. Thanks for coming, Grandpa. Olivia's voice trembled when she spoke. Mr. Harrison, Tom, I owe you an apology. I stayed standing, watching her. For what exactly? For disrespecting you, for treating our wedding like a performance, for forgetting that love isn't content. She swallowed hard. I thought success meant control. I was wrong. I didn't say anything for a while. Her words sounded rehearsed, but her eyes didn't. They were swollen, sincere. I don't hate you, Olivia, I said finally. But I pity what this world does to young people. It teaches them to sell their souls one post at a time. She nodded, tears glistening. I've deleted everything. We're done with that life. Ethan quit his agency job. We just want to start over. Ethan reached across the table. We'd like you to bless our new start, Grandpa. Bless them, after everything. I thought of Margaret again, how she'd forgive before she'd ever raise her voice. How she'd tell me, forgiveness isn't letting them off the hook, Tom. It's freeing yourself. So, I took a slow breath, then reached into my jacket pocket. You want a blessing? I said. Then earn it. I placed a small box on the table. Inside was a silver firefighter's badge, my old one. This is the only legacy I have left. My honor, my service, my family name. Protect it. Ethan's lip quivered. I will. Don't promise me, I said. Show me. We ate quietly after that. No cameras, no hashtags, just the clinking of plates and the sound of something breaking open between us. Not anger, not blame, but possibility. When I left, Ethan hugged me tight for the first time in years. Olivia whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." Outside, the air was cool and clean. I looked up at the stars and whispered, "You see that, Maggie? Maybe the boy's finally found his way home." But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. The internet had built me into a symbol, and symbols come with consequences. Because the more people called me the internet's grandpa, the more stories started finding me. Sons, daughters, families broken in quieter, crueler ways. And that's when I realized something I hadn't expected. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It was a mirror, and people were seeing themselves in it. What I chose to do next would decide whether this was just another viral headline, or something that actually healed. And I'd already made up my mind. I never thought an old man's heartbreak would start a movement. But that's exactly what happened. What began as a letter written at 2 a.m. over cold coffee became something bigger, something alive. People started calling it Jammed Family First, a simple hashtag, born from pain, now living its own life in thousands of homes I'd never seen. It started small, a few videos, stories, and letters. Then came the families reuniting on live streams, grown men hugging fathers they hadn't spoken to in years, grandkids flying home to visit grandparents before it's too late. Someone even printed my letter on t-shirts. Family isn't a brand, it read. It's a bond. I couldn't decide whether to laugh or cry. Mark, my journalist friend, said, "Tom, you've gone viral twice now. You're trending in 5 countries. People want you on talk shows." "I'm not a showman," I said. "I'm a grandfather who made a mistake and tried to fix it." "That's exactly why they need to hear you," he insisted. Before long, my phone became a lifeline. Teenagers, widows, estranged siblings, all reaching out, pouring their hearts into messages longer than novels. Some thanked me. Others just needed to be heard. I read every word, every trembling confession. And for the first time since Margaret's death, I felt like I had a purpose again. But fame is a strange beast. It feeds on sincerity until there's nothing left but noise. It started one evening when a package arrived at my door. No name, just a sleek silver envelope. Inside was an invitation to speak at something called the Legacy Summit, a 3-day event in Toronto for modern voices reshaping family values. Flights, hotel, even a stylist were included. I should have known it was too polished to be real. I called Mark. "You heard of this Legacy Summit?" He laughed darkly. "It's run by a PR firm, Tom. They'll dress it up like a movement, then sell your story to sponsors. Family values brought to you by toothpaste and tech companies." I sighed. "So they want to turn me into what I fought against." "Exactly," he said. "But they'll make it sound noble. Don't fall for it." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to stay home, to protect what little peace I had left. But another part, the firefighter in me, couldn't just watch from the sidelines while others twisted the meaning of what I'd started. So I packed my old suitcase, polished my shoes, and boarded a train to Toronto. The conference hall looked more like a movie set than a place for real conversation. Giant banners of smiling families lined the walls, all lit by cold white lights. Cameras everywhere. The program listed my talk as "Reclaiming Authenticity: How One Grandfather Sparked a Global Movement." When I stepped onto the stage, the applause was thunderous. Rows of people with phones raised like torches. For a moment, I felt dizzy, not from nerves, but from disbelief. All this from one broken night. I spoke simply, the only way I knew how. "I'm no hero," I told them. "I'm just a man who forgot that silence helps lies grow. Family isn't perfect, but it's the only thing that lasts when everything else falls apart. You don't fix love by posting about it. You fix it by showing up." The crowd stood and clapped, but I could see through it, half admiration, half opportunity. A producer approached me backstage. "Tom, that was powerful. We'd love to sign you for a documentary. The Internet's Grandpa, a story of redemption. We could monetize this properly." I smiled politely and said, "Son, if I wanted to sell my soul, I'd have done it when it was still worth something." I left before they could pitch me another idea. Outside, the city air felt like freedom again. I walked until the noise faded behind me. That's when my phone buzzed, a text from Ethan. "Grandpa, we saw your speech. You look strong, proud of you." For the first time in months, those words didn't feel empty. I wrote back, "Proud of you too, kid. Stay that way." When I returned home, something unexpected was waiting in my mailbox, a thick envelope addressed in Olivia's handwriting. Inside was a handwritten letter, pages of it. She told me she'd quit social media completely, that she was in therapy, trying to untangle her obsession with validation, that she and Ethan were moving to a small house near Lake Huron, my lake, and they wanted me to visit. At the bottom, she wrote, "I never understood what real legacy meant until I met the man I tried to erase. I didn't realize I was crying until one of the tears hit the page." A week later, I drove out there, 3 hours north, where the air still smelled like pine and freedom. When I arrived, the house was small but bright, with wildflowers growing along the fence. Olivia opened the door, barefoot, no makeup, a little nervous. Ethan stood behind her, smiling like the boy I remembered. "Welcome home, Grandpa," he said. Dinner was simple: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, laughter, real laughter, no cameras, no pretenses, just the sound of family breathing again. After dessert, Ethan handed me a small box. Inside was a brass key. "What's this?" I asked. "Our house has a guest room," he said. "We thought maybe you'd want to use it once in a while." My throat tightened. "You sure about that? I tend to ruin weddings." He grinned. "Good thing this isn't one." We sat outside afterward, watching the lake turn gold in the evening light. Olivia poured coffee, and for once she didn't look like someone trying to curate a moment, just a young woman who'd learned the hard way what matters. "Tom," she said softly, "do you forgive me?" I looked at her, really looked. "Forgiveness isn't a word, Liv. It's a road. You're walking it. Keep walking." She nodded, tears glistening. That night, I slept in their guest room, listening to the quiet sounds of two people finding their way back to something real. But peace never stays still. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A message from Mark. "Tom, someone's trying to use your name to launch a Family First Foundation. Big money behind it. They're claiming you're part of it." I stared at the screen, my stomach turning cold. They hadn't just twisted my story. They were trying to own it. I looked out the window at the rising sun over the lake and whispered, "Not this time," because this old man still had a few fires left to fight. The email came at dawn, a quiet threat dressed in politeness. "Dear Mr. Harrison, we've launched the Family First Foundation in your honor, a non-profit dedicated to promoting your message of family unity. We'd appreciate your public endorsement at our upcoming gala. Attendance is expected from key media and investors. A generous honorarium will be provided." There was no signature, only a logo that made my gut twist. The same slick design from the Legacy Summit. I knew right then what it was. Not a tribute, but a hijacking. I'd spent months trying to show people that family couldn't be monetized, and now some marketing wolves were using my name to sell it back to them. I called Mark immediately. "They've gone too far this time," he sighed. "I figured they would. The foundation's already online. Website, social pages, donation links. They're claiming you founded it. Did you find who's behind it? 2 shell companies. Same PR group that tried to sign you in Toronto. They smell money, Tom. Your name pulls views." I rubbed my forehead. "Well, they're about to find out old firefighters still know how to handle a blaze." By breakfast, I was at my computer. I hadn't used social media since the storm quieted, but it was time to strike one more match. I typed slowly, deliberately. "They say the Family First Foundation was started in my honor. That's a lie. Family isn't a brand, and I don't take bribes disguised as donations. Don't give them a penny. Build your family, not their business. Tom Harrison." I hit post. Within an hour, it spread faster than the first letter ever had. People were furious. Not at me this time, but for me. "They're stealing from him. He's right. Stop turning love into marketing." By noon, sponsors began pulling out. By sunset, the foundation's website had vanished like it never existed. That's when the phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Harrison," a man's voice said, smooth and corporate, "you've caused quite a stir." I leaned back in my chair. "You built a scam with my name on it. Stirring was the least I could do." He chuckled. "You misunderstand. We were offering legacy, security. You could have been the face of a movement." "I already have a face," I said. "It's the one my wife used to kiss goodnight, and it's not for sale." "Be careful, old man," he said quietly. "Not everyone online loves you. You've made powerful people look foolish." "Good," I said, and hung up. For a few days, I kept the blinds closed. Old instincts from years of firefighting. When you know the smoke isn't gone, just because you can't see the flames. But something in me had changed. I wasn't scared. Just tired of watching good things rot because no one stood up. That Friday, Ethan came by. He brought groceries and coffee, smiling like he used to before the world got noisy. "You're trending again," he said with a grin. "This time for calling out corporate crooks. People are calling you the conscience of the internet." I chuckled. "Sounds like a good way to get hacked." He grew serious. "Grandpa, Olivia and I want to help. We've started a small podcast. No sponsors, no scripts, real people telling real family stories. We're calling it Letters from Home. You'd be our first guest." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure you want your old man's voice scaring your audience?" "They already love you," he said. "But we want to do it right this time. No filters, no pretending." The following week, I sat in front of a microphone for the first time in my life. Ethan adjusted the levels while Olivia smiled nervously from across the table. "Just talk," she said softly, "like you used to with him by the lake." So I did. I told the world about firehouses and long nights, about Margaret and the lessons she'd left behind, about the day I realized silence is its own kind of betrayal. But mostly I talked about love, messy, stubborn, unconditional love. The episode went live that evening. By morning, it had 500,000 streams. Not viral like before, slower, gentler, the kind of growth that lasts. And this time, no one was exploiting it. No brands, no lies, just people listening. That night, I got a message from an unfamiliar address. "You win, old man, for now." No name, no threat. But I could almost hear that same corporate smirk behind it. I smiled to myself. "You can't scare a man who's already buried half his fears," I muttered, shutting off my phone. Weeks passed, life quieted, the lake froze over, the air turned crisp. I started visiting Ethan and Olivia more often. Their house became a refuge. No Wi-Fi most days, just books, laughter, and the hum of something healing. One afternoon, as we sat by the fire, Olivia handed me a small envelope. "We've been saving up," she said shyly. Inside was a brochure, Harrison Family Retreats, Weekends for Reconnection. I looked up, startled. "You're starting a business?" "Not a business," Ethan said. "A real foundation. Free workshops for families struggling to rebuild communication. We'll teach them what you taught us. How to listen, how to forgive. No sponsors, no money making, just people helping people." Olivia added softly, "We want your blessing, not your name." I felt tears sting my eyes. "You already have both." That night, after they'd gone to bed, I stepped outside and looked up at the stars. The cold air bit at my skin, but my heart felt warm for the first time in years. Margaret used to say every fire leaves light behind, even the ones that burn you. Maybe she was right. The world had tried to turn me into a product, but instead, my family had turned my pain into purpose. And as the wind moved through the pines, I whispered, "The fire's yours now, Ethan. Keep it burning clean." But even in peace, a story rarely ends so neatly. Because a week later, Mark called again. "Tom," he said grimly, "you might want to sit down." "What is it?" He hesitated. "Someone leaked your private emails, the early ones, from when you first wrote that letter. They're saying your story was exaggerated, that maybe you planned the publicity." For a long moment, I said nothing. The kettle on my stove began to whistle softly, like the start of another storm. "Then I guess," I said finally, "it's time to remind them what the truth sounds like. Because a fire doesn't die quietly, and neither do I. They thought an old man wouldn't fight back, that I'd crumble under the weight of headlines and whispers. Grandpa Hero's story was a hoax? Did Tom Harrison orchestrate his own fame? Overnight, the same internet that once called me the conscience of a generation was now calling me a fraud. I sat at my kitchen table again. Same chair, same mug, same silence. But this time, I wasn't alone. Ethan and Olivia were there, faces tight with worry. Olivia's laptop screen showed a dozen articles twisting my words, quoting lines out of context. "They're saying you staged the first letter," she said quietly. "That you planned the video leak to build a brand." I took a slow breath. "Funny thing," I said. "Truth never needs a marketing plan." Ethan's voice shook. "We can prove them wrong, Grandpa. We'll post everything. Screenshots, the real timeline." "No," I interrupted. "That's not how you fight lies. You don't scream louder than them. You speak clearer." For the next few hours I wrote. Not a defense, not an argument, just a confession. The truth as I lived it. Every mistake, every regret, every flame I'd ever walked through trying to save something that mattered. "I didn't ask for any of this," I began. "I wrote a letter because silence felt heavier than shame." If that letter found people, maybe it's because we all share the same wound, the pain of being forgotten by those we love. I didn't plan the attention. I barely knew how to post the thing. But if you need to call me something, don't call me a hero or a fraud. Call me what I am, a man who still believes family is worth fighting for. I ended with this. If you think the world needs less noise and more honesty, put down your phone. Go hug someone who still remembers your laugh. That's the only story worth sharing. We posted it at midnight. No hashtags, no images, just words. By morning, it had reached millions. But this time, the response wasn't outrage or spectacle. It was quiet, thoughtful, real. "Thank you for not yelling back," one person wrote. "My grandpa passed before I could say sorry." "You made me pick up the phone," said another. The tide turned fast. News outlets ran updates. Tom Harrison speaks with grace amid accusations. Even the harshest critics softened. One anchor said, "Maybe the lesson here isn't whether Tom's story was perfect. Maybe it's that it made us care again." Ethan and Olivia were crying when they read the comments. I wasn't. My tears had already been spent, but I felt something better. Peace. A week later, I got an invitation from a community center in Sudbury. They were hosting a family reconnection night and wanted me to speak. No cameras, no PR, just families. I almost said no. But then I thought of all the people who'd written me letters and all the stories still burning quietly in homes across the country. So I went. When I stepped onto that small wooden stage, maybe 50 people sat in folding chairs, clutching photographs, tissues, each other's hands. Some smiled, some looked terrified. I understood both. "I'm not here to give a speech," I began. "I'm here to listen, but since you asked me to talk first, here's what I know about fires." I looked out at them, young, old, angry, hopeful. You can't control a fire once it starts. You can only choose what it burns. Let it burn your pride, not your people. Let it light the way home. A murmur rippled through the room. Someone sobbed quietly in the back. Afterward, people lined up just to talk, not for selfies, but for stories. One man said, "I showed your letter to my father. He called me for the first time in 7 years. A woman whispered, "My daughter and I talked again because of you." When it was over, I sat outside on the steps, watching the snow fall slow and heavy, blanketing everything in silence. Ethan joined me, hands in his coat pockets. "Grandpa," he said softly, "I think you saved more families than you'll ever know." I shook my head. "No, son, they saved themselves. I just reminded them how." He smiled, then slipped his hand into mine, the same hand he used to hold when he was 5, crossing the street. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like we were walking apart. As we sat there, a car pulled up. Olivia stepped out, waving a small package. "Mail came for you, Tom." Inside was a frame, no return address. It was the photo from the wedding, the one that had gone viral, but someone had edited it, beautifully, tenderly. There I was, not hidden in the corner anymore, but standing beside Ethan and Olivia under the mountain sky. A note at the bottom read, "Every family deserves a second draft." I laughed through the tears this time. Later that night, back home, I placed the photo on the mantel beside Margaret's. Her eyes, forever bright, seemed to look right through me. "Well, Maggie," I whispered, "looks like we're still teaching them." The house creaked softly in reply, the way it always did when the wind shifted. I sat in my armchair, watching the fire fade to embers, thinking about all the flames I'd faced in this life, the literal ones, and the ones that burned inside the heart. And as the last glow dimmed, I realized something I wish I'd known sooner. The world doesn't remember the noise. It remembers the warmth. And that's what I left behind. The end.